Man, it is perfect outside. And it is still, I will admit, I mean, it's awesome, but it's still a little bit surreal.
Totally awesome.
All right, Hamilton. It's maybe it shouldn't be, right? Like, we're a big league city. We've hosted a Super Bowl. We've won a Super Bowl. I didn't personally. But I should just come to the realization now that this is a city that is set to, for the third time in its history, host the NBA Finals. Now, Eddie, that sounds odd, does it not?
No, it does not, Jake. It does not sound odd at all.
It doesn't?
No.
So you can tell me the years that the city has hosted the NBA Finals.
Nope. Could not do that.
How many times has the city hosted the NBA Finals?
Did you say 3?
Yes.
Including
this year will be the third.
Okay. So 25 years ago when they made it.
Correct.
And are you going with technically in 73 when they were the ABA?
No, the NBA Finals.
NBA? I'm not sure when the other time would have been.
I almost feel like I'm burying the lead because this would have been a perfect trivia question. Would have been a perfect trivia question.
For our ticket giveaway?
Yes. In 1955, the Fort Wayne Pistons made the NBA Finals against the Syracuse Nationals. And the Fort Wayne Coliseum was being built. They did not anticipate that the Pistons would make it far enough to go to the finals. So the Coliseum was not yet finished, and they were doing renovations to it between the regular season and the postseason because they didn't think that the Pistons would be playing that late. So the Fort Wayne Pistons played the 1955 NBA Finals home games at the Indiana State Fairground Coliseum in Indianapolis. So 1955, 2000, and 2025. And last night, I got to thinking about this. I was sitting around. Michael Rappaport, I think, is very entertaining. And I think he was great. There was a show called Atypical that he was the star in that I thought he was great. That show was great. He's very funny. And the Reggie Miller 30 for 30, he goes on about Reggie Miller in that. I've seen his stand-up routine. It was very funny. Part of it's just his delivery, and his New York accent is funny. But I did not realize until last night when I really sat down and thought about this. The Indiana Pacers own the New York Knicks. They own them. The New York Knicks, which are a great franchise, or which is, I should say, a great franchise, but not in terms of its on-court success. The Garden is special. It's historic. It makes you feel like there's always a big event going on there. And if you think about New York and you think about going in and taking on the Knicks, this is the chance. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. And Bright Lights, big city, and the most famous arena in the world, and the hustle and the bustle of the taxi cabs and the trains and everything else. And yet we in Indiana still have this inferiority complex about the Pacers. We still in Indiana have this chip on our shoulder that is, we're not so bad. We're tired of hearing about the Lakers. We're tired of hearing about the Knicks. We're tired of hearing about the Celtics. Let's show you what we have here in Indiana. And that's part of why this is so sweet. It's so sweet because we still, as I talk about a lot, have the mentality in this town of we just want to be accepted at the adult table. And for 25 years now, we have. We are at the adult table. This is one of the great sports cities in the United States. But nonetheless, you still feel like it's a challenge and a great accomplishment to go in and eliminate the Knicks. But the New York Knicks have played the Indiana Pacers in the postseason 9 times. 9 times in their history. The Boston Celtics are the only franchise that have eliminated the New York Knicks more than the Indiana Pacers. The Boston Celtics, 7 times in their history, the New York Knicks have walked off a court having their season come to an end and a postseason elimination at the hands of the Boston Celtics. Indiana has done that to them 6 of the 9 times. Literally, 2/3 of the times that the New York Knicks have played the Indiana Pacers in the postseason, the Indiana Pacers have stared them down and said, how you like us now? And we're supposed to be Stephen A. Smith or Keyshawn Johnson or, whoever else, probably Peter Vesey, whoever, all wrote or said that the Pacers should be intimidated by New York. The stage is too big. The finals will be too big a stage for Indiana. Hicks, Cornfield, Indiana can't come into New York. They're going to be intimidated by the raucous crowd of Timothy Chalamet and whoever the one actor was that was puking on the floor and Ben Stiller and everybody else, right? And yet, the Indiana Pacers own the New York Knicks. And as I was thinking about it last night, I was watching and I saw a video of Michael Rappaport, who is a huge Knicks fan. And I thought about the inferiority complex of Indiana and how it was supposed to be that New York would be in Indiana's head, that Indiana would constantly be in a New York state of mind because the Pacers were going to be intimidated by the Knicks. And then I listened to Michael Rappaport, and it all made sense. Here's Michael Rappaport last night.
Reggie Miller and the choking and the Detlef Shrimp. I mean, the Rick Smiths and the Davis boys and the Chris Mullen and the Larry Bird and the Isaiah Thomas and Indiana, man. Indiana. Indiana. Larry Bird. Okay? Sorry. Steve Alford, Damon Bailey, the late, great Bobby Knight. Sorry, he was great. I loved Bobby Knight. But Indiana basketball. Their jump shots, the Hoosiers. That movie, I feel like it's overrated. No disrespect to the great Gene Hackman. It was a brutal, painful loss, and we're not supposed to take it well. And I don't like people mocking, how's your pizza today? Nixon 8, Nixon 9. How's your hot dogs and your pizza today? How's your chicken chopped cheese today? That's what they're saying to Knicks fans. We superseded expectations. We made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. We lost to a better team, a faster team, a deeper team. They were full court pressing Jalen Brunson like it was AAU in high school. You don't see the point guard in the NBA get full court pressed all game, every game. That doesn't happen. But the Indiana Pacers were built to do that, and they did it.
So here's what you had right there. You had one of the more famous, vociferous, outspoken, and candid Knicks fan. One of the most famous. In terms of his fandom, I don't mean he's the most famous of people that are fans of the Knicks. I mean he is famous for being a Knicks fan. And that right there was Indiana in his head. Damon Bailey is taking strays. Steve Alford, the guy that people wanted instead of Reggie Miller. It goes that far back. It runs that deep. It hurt that much to their core. The Indiana Pacers got in the head of the New York Knicks, and New York now is the one that has the inferiority complex because that's what this team does. And then I got to thinking about it and what the secret to this Pacers team's success is and why this is better than a lot of teams that go to the finals and why this is sweeter. Look at the Pacers roster. Tyrese Halliburton. 3-star recruit in high school. Chooses Iowa State over Bradley and North Carolina Charlotte. Plays well at Iowa State. Gets drafted by the Sacramento Kings and assumes he's going to be a King for life. Starts 71 games in Sacramento, and they trade him. And they say, we've decided De'Aaron Fox is a better guy than you. We're moving on from you. And he comes to Indiana, and he's hurt by that. But Indiana gives him a chance. And his redemption tour begins in Indiana, and he has a chip on his shoulder. And that chip on his shoulder parlays into a team that creates an inferiority complex to even the biggest media capital of the world and their fans. Pascal Siakam, not a marquee player in high school, obviously an international player, goes to a basketball academy, but ends up signing with New Mexico State. New Mexico State. Leaves there, gets drafted, goes to the Toronto Raptors, wins a title. And everybody says the title was because of Kawhi Leonard, even though Pascal Siakam's an all-NBA player. And Toronto trades him. And his agent says he only wants to be traded to a franchise that will accept and potentially extend him and give him opportunity. So Pascal Siakam, as great as he's been as a pro and with the ring on his finger, comes to Indiana partially on a redemption tour because he wasn't a marquee recruit and he was a little bit overshadowed in his NBA title run. And he comes to Indiana with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder that allows him to come together with a team that then creates inferiority complex and chip on his shoulder, not just for New York, but for Cleveland, who was the 1 seed. Obi Toppin was the National Player of the Year at Dayton. Probably would have won a national title for the Flyers, but COVID hits and there's no tournament that year. Goes into the NBA, gets drafted by his home area of New York. Starts 47 times over 5 years. Falls out of rotation and gets traded to the Indiana Pacers in exchange for 2 Subway tokens and a bag of Krispy Kreme. And in the moment where Indiana had to land the knockout punch against Gotham, Obi Toppin was flying through, blocking shots, making alley-oops, and punching his team's ticket into the NBA Finals, carrying with him his own redemption tour of an inferiority complex that made New York talk about Knicks in 8 and Knicks in 9. Andrew Nimhard, a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, top 20 player, signs with Florida. Transfers from Florida to Gonzaga. Starts 115 games in college at 2 big programs, Florida and Gonzaga. Falls out of the first round. Sees other guys getting drafted ahead of him that are finding their way through the G League. Yet as the 31st pick, immediately gets an extension for Indiana and has something to prove to those that passed on him and made him a second-round pick where he had to go through and through camp earn himself a guaranteed contract because it didn't come with the position in which he was drafted. And in his redemption tour, didn't shoot the ball well throughout the Knicks series. But what did he do when it mattered most? Bogs down and bulldogs on Jalen Brunson, and then gives New York the complex of how did our star get shut down when it mattered most? Aaron Nesmith. Aaron Nesmith went to Vanderbilt with Darius Garland and was thought to be an elite-level shooter. And after a year at Vanderbilt, elects to go into the NBA draft. Gets drafted by the Boston Celtics. They got a logjam at position. Only appears in 98 games over 2 seasons. A 4-star recruit that now all of a sudden finds himself playing behind Romeo Langford. And here's his name involved in a trade from Malcolm Brogdon, who literally shows up with Alan Alda with him because the rest of the MASH unit had to come with Malcolm Brogdon because he can't play 3 straight games. But Boston was willing to take that on and part ways with Aaron Nesmith. And Nesmith comes to Indiana knowing this is the land of opportunity, and he makes the most of it. And nobody knew who he was in New York City going into the Eastern Conference Finals, but they did in the last 5 minutes of Game 1. And Aaron Nesmith carries with him that motivation of, I'm going to push my chest out, not because necessarily that I'm worried about the Nesmith on the back, but the front of my jersey represents the franchise that gave me my chance. Ben Shepherd. Ben Shepherd was a no-star recruit coming out of high school, to my knowledge, and signed with Belmont. Ben Shepherd gets drafted by the Pacers when they have a second pick within the draft that they're selecting him, and people are like, they went with a 4-year college guy that was a nice player in a smaller school and can shoot a little bit and defend. And Ben Shepherd, as a rookie, gets his minutes, gets good rotation, falls out of rotation a little bit, comes back, and is Johnny on the spot. And is taking advantage of the opportunities because of a franchise that saw more in Ben Shepherd than a lot of franchises who thought maybe the Pacers reached when they drafted him. T.J. McConnell. T.J. McConnell grew up in Pittsburgh area, plays for his dad in high school, and signs with Duquesne out of high school. Duquesne. Transfers then to Arizona, makes enough of a name for himself that he gets into the NBA, and the Philadelphia 76ers use him a lot, and then consider that basically he's a deep rotational 13th guy, and he ends up in Indiana, and every single time that dude steps on the floor, he goes out there and plays like the guy that literally when you go out and play pickup basketball at the Y, you wonder why this dude's checking you up 35 feet from the basket. And he's the guy on his lunch break with the hairy shoulders and sweat all over him, and he's gelatinous, and you're like, why is it? And it totally takes you out of your game. That's T.J. McConnell. He carries with him this inferiority complex that's a bulldog-type mentality. He's like a chihuahua. Won't stop barking, right? And it carries over to his team. Thomas Bryant comes in and hits big-time threes in that game when Indiana most needed it, and New York felt like they had him where they wanted him. They get it within 5 or 7, and Bryant just keeps hitting threes. And Thomas Bryant knows he's with a franchise that made a move in the middle of the season to get him here and give him opportunity after Miami had completely written him off because of injury. This entire roster, Miles Turner for that matter, Miles Turner was drafted by this franchise, has been literally the best soldier the city could ask for. Miles Turner has been nothing but a solid citizen, solid person, philanthropic guy, always positive, upbeat, blocked out the noise, and 90% of people listening to my voice right now at some point have said to their friends, they got to trade Miles Turner. I'm tired of this guy. He's soft. He gets beat up. He's not physical enough. He doesn't rebound enough. He's not nasty. He's not a rim protector. 90% of people, you might like him, but you had your doubts about him. The dude never bought into any of it. He used it to motivate him, and he wanted to pay back a franchise that has stood by him from the get-go. This story is so good. This group is so good and so likable that this town has almost outgrown the mentality of the Pacers because we've been here before. But this one's so sweet. For all those reasons, because we've all been in that situation, whether you like it or not. Whether you like it or not, everybody's been in that situation where you knew what's being asked of you was something you weren't ready for. You knew the opportunity at work or the promotion you got. Maybe somebody else might have been a better selection, but they believed in you, and you couldn't let people know that you weren't ready for the moment. I'm not saying the Pacers weren't ready for the moment, but they have a bunch of guys that dug down and said, this is the franchise that gave me my shot. And Tyrese Halliburton said it. This is the franchise that gave me my shot. And now all of a sudden, the exact group of people that we were told the Pacers were going to be intimidated by are the ones that are sitting around wondering what in the hell just happened and questioning themselves. And I don't care one hill of beans whether or not Karl Anthony Towns gets traded from New York or whether or not they think Jalen Brunson has enough size, or whether or not they think that OG Anunoby needs to be parlayed for Giannis. I don't care one hill of beans. What I know is this. What I know is that each respective franchise in the National Basketball Association's Eastern Conference that was supposed to be the one that was going to give a reality check to the Indiana Pacers right now are juggling their time between figure out where in the hell they're going and where they're going to watch the NBA Finals that has the Pacers taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's awesome. Everything about it is awesome. It's so awesome that even Gene Hackman, Damon Bailey, and Steve Alford and Detlef Schrempf caught strays in all of it because they're all lumped in, and Reggie Miller and everybody else. I love everything about it. And over the course of the week, we're going to now get more into what Indiana faces because it is a big challenge. It is. Oklahoma City's good. They're really good. They're historically good. And, yeah, maybe they are better than Indiana. I don't know. What I know is this. What I know is that each step of the way that we thought somebody was better than Indiana, there's just something secret about this team that you cannot put a price on. And that is when everybody else counts them out, they count themselves in. When Thomas Bryant was counted out in Miami, he knew that Indiana was a place where he could go, and he counted himself in. When T.J. McConnell was counted out in Philly, he came to Indiana and counted himself in. When Tyrese Halliburton was counted out by Sacramento, he came to Indiana, had the choice, and counted himself in. When Andrew Nembhard was counted out of the first round, he came to Indiana, performed to the point where they paid him like a first rounder, and he counted himself in. Aaron Nesmith in Boston came to Indiana and counted himself in. Let's go. I love everything about it. And we'll talk about it over the course of today. Stephen Holder also going to join us 1 o'clock today. Scott Agnes at 2 o'clock. Eddie Garrison is sipping his chai tea, which means he's either feeling uppity or tired.
Not chai tea. This is peach green tea.
Now that seems, it's either green tea or it's peach tea.
Peach green tea.
Well, peach is a color and a flavor, so it's a green tea that has peach flavoring.
Yes.
And you enjoy the peach green tea?
I do.
Okay.
I wouldn't drink it if I didn't enjoy it.
Okay, fair enough. Does it give you a little jolt of energy?
I don't know. I'm only halfway through.
You know, a guy that I'm worried about for the Pacers is Jarris Walker. We don't know the status of Jarris Walker. I think it's safe to say that Jarris Walker,
he's out games 1 and game 2.
Yeah, I mean, and I would be surprised if he goes beyond that. But, I mean, if he comes back beyond that. And I know that he's been a limited minutes guy, and I've talked a lot about kind of my intrigue with Jarris Walker. But this particular series, Oklahoma City, I think, does a lot of things the same as Indiana, but with slightly more size and athleticism. And Walker is a guy that I think could be a hybrid that can counter that to an extent. Because what makes Indiana different is, obviously, you heard Michael Rappaport say it, the pace in which they play, the speed in which they play. Oklahoma City does that as well. The challenge for the Pacers is they have 3 series in a row now caught teams off guard that were not prepared for the way the Pacers played. And one of the keys for the Pacers is, over the course of this season, when they have tried to play that pace, they were, for the better part of the year, they were hurt. And so people fell into believing, they got trapped into and sucked into believing that the Pacers they were facing were perhaps the Pacers they saw in October, November, December, January. This is a totally different team from, say, Valentine's Day on. It just is, because now they're healthy, and now people had not gotten used to or thought about what exactly they were, and they were caught off guard by it. Oklahoma City plays the same way, and that's going to be the challenge. This is the one team that I don't think is necessarily going to be caught off guard by what the Pacers do. But one of the things that the Pacers, the reason they do that is because they can go so deep and constantly stay fresh. And while Walker was not used for the first half of the New York series, we did see him in other playoff series, and he is a little bit of a variation that comes with that. And in this particular series, you know, he is a guy, if he's 100% healthy, that can spell you and spare you some minutes anywhere, literally from Nembhard to Siakam to Nesmith. I mean, there are various ways and positions that he can play. Not having that. Yes, he is not a game-changing player, but he allows you to keep rhythm of what it is that you want to do. And that worries me a little bit. It does worry me a little bit. But would you expect to see him by game 3, Eddie, or are you like me kind of sadly resigned to that fact?
I'm probably resigned to that fact because look what it took for him to get on the floor against the Knicks.
I think part of that was matchup, but yes.
And he didn't get on the floor until game 5.
I understand. But what I'm saying, but for example, Tony Bradley. Another guy, by the way, got his shot late, right? Indiana gives him an opportunity. Tony Bradley is a guy that I don't think anybody would say that Tony Bradley is a guy that typically is more in rotation than Thomas Bryant. But the matchups, because of Robinson's size, it was a better matchup for him to be on the floor against New York. I think Walker is a better matchup rotation with Oklahoma City than he was with New York, based on the personnel of the two teams. I get what you're saying. I'm not saying he's a critical piece, but it's kind of like in 2000 when the Pacers went to the NBA Finals. Was Antonio Davis going to be a difference against Shaq? Probably not, but having another body there, or even an Eric Dampier who they traded 3 years earlier, would have been beneficial as opposed to not having him, although maybe that wasn't the total difference because they weren't mainline guys. And that same could be true for, obviously the fact with Jarris Walker. You also, Eddie, in addition to this program, you are the pre- and post-game host for Fever Broadcast, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the latest in terms of their scheduling, obviously I know Caitlin Clark is out. Give us up to speed on that.
They play tonight against the Washington Mystics. 7 o'clock
and
right
so
here on
we're
the
going
Fan.
to dive into that a little bit next, right? Correct?
Yes, that is
All
accurate.
right, Debbie Antonelli will join us on the other side. We'll mix in a little Pacer chat with her as well, but Fever Conversation. Stephen Holder, 1 o'clock. Scott Agnes, 2 o'clock. A chip on our shoulders Tuesday, if you will, here. Query and Company on the Fan. Thank you for the kind comments, by the way, from people that one guy said he's ready to run through a wall after my opening monologue, Eddie. I thought you were about to do the same, but that was just your peach green tea, right?
No.
Right? We'll have to replay Michael Rappaport coming up a little bit later on in the show and what it means for the Pacers and their secret ingredient for the Fever. In action tonight, taking on the Washington Mystics. They are trying to snap a 3-game skid. Joining us now on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line and, of course, working the television broadcast as the analyst, Debbie Antontelli, a return friend of the program. Debbie, how are you?
Man, I'm doing great. Have you heard Darius and Scotty McCreary's new song, Bottle Rockets? It's awesome.
You know, Darius, here's the thing. This is the key, Debbie, to the fact that it's awesome, is by nature, I am not a country music listener or fan. I'm not a hater of it. It was never my genre. But yet Darius Rucker has perfectly done that crossover that has like drawn me into that. Does that make sense?
It makes 100% sense to me. He did the same thing for me. He pulled me into country music. And, of course, Scotty McCreery is an NC State grad, so I'm always pulling for that guy.
That guy, the baritone nature of his voice is fascinating. He's a very good singer.
That's a good song, Bottle Rockets. It's brand new. It's just out. I just heard it yesterday, first time.
Bottle Rockets. I'm writing this down right now. You know, when I was a kid, not that I would advise this to anybody, but Matt Jacklin's backyard had a pond in it, and Bottle Rockets actually go off underneath the water, and it's fairly fascinating to see for what that's worth. Probably should.
We all put our lives at risk when we were kids doing that.
Yeah. Sad Sam's Fireworks in Tennessee might actually have gotten half my 401k at one point when I was a kid. Debbie, let's get to the Fever here. I'm curious of this from your observation. With Caitlin Clark out, one of the things that I had said, you know, sometimes teams, the Pacers right now, at the beginning of the year when Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nembhard were out, it was not always fun to watch the Pacers struggle through that and find their way. But now it all comes together, and you realize the benefit of the fact that other players had to play and had to learn different ways on the court, and now that's paying dividend. For the Fever, what player or players do you feel like are learning their way through with Caitlin Clark's absence that potentially this is going to help them mature as a unit later in the season?
Well, first of all, Jake, you're absolutely right. And the one single thing that Caitlin does for every player is makes the game easier. She makes the game easier for everyone that she's on the court with. Because of her vision, because of her long-range shooting, she creates space, she creates tempo, and she makes the game easier. So when you have that servant leadership attitude about the way you play the game, you're naturally going to impact and influence everyone else on the floor. Right now, I think Aaliyah Boston's so good in the middle third, playing in that short role that without Caitlin, they don't run that set as much. She's more on the block, so she's going back to maybe her old college days where she spent a lot of time going block to block and not starting the possession on the block, but eventually diving to the block and showing off her skill set right now. I mean, she's been fantastic. She's shooting 62% from the floor, and she's really good around the rim. I also think that you can't really put a measurement on where DeWanna Bonner and Natasha Howard are going to be yet because they really haven't had the reps with Caitlin. If you consider, she missed some of the preseason. Now she's been out for a couple of games. We expect her to be out for 2 more. So you can't put an impact on that. Kelsey Mitchell going back to maybe playing with the ball in her hands in the first 10 seconds of the shot clock instead of always playing as a decision maker in the last 10 seconds of the shot clock. So there are certain things about the way the Fever is playing now that's going to overall make the ascension a little bit slower, but that's not a bad thing because we're just stepping into June and we got a lot of games to play.
How many games, Debbie? Debbie Antontelli is our guest here on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line. When a marquee player like a Caitlin Clark, who is the straw mixing the drink, when she is suddenly then not available, how many games typically, by your observation or from your playing days, does it take a team to adjust, especially if it's a player that you almost found yourself on the floor kind of watching what they are doing, and now all of a sudden that's not there, and so the wheels still got to turn. that typically takes how long to kind of reacclimate and reorient your flow?
Well, you're talking about a defensive IQ and an offensive IQ. So there's two parts of the game here impacted. I would say that, what is most important is that you get reps. And unfortunately, because of the way the schedule lays out, your reps happen in game. So you're not getting all that practice time. The training camp is short. You've got all these new players. It's not an excuse. It's a long haul look at the game. It's a long run look at what Indiana is going to be. Not what they are right now, but what they are going to be. That's the way Stephanie White is looking at it. That's the way the front office looks at it. And that's what you got to sell to the players. Yeah, your record is 2-4. You've played without Caitlin. But 4 of the games that you've lost by 1 or 2 possessions. I mean, we're talking about 1 and 2 point games here. The 4 losses are a total of 11 points. So you're in games, you're in situations, and you're doing it when you're not at 100%. Now you've got, Sophie Cunningham's out again. So she's expected to play a significant role with this team because of her versatility on both sides of the ball. So it's going to take some time. It might take longer than the fans expect it to take, but as far as the grind of the process and a day-to-day model that you're looking at along a 3 months of basketball remaining, we're in good shape, honestly. I mean, I don't think Indiana's in bad shape at all. There's no panic, certainly.
Debbie, let me tell you something a conversation I had once that I've referenced on this show before, but I found it fascinating. I was talking to a sports executive who had been given a lot of credit for a lot of great and shrewd sports moves. And he said to me, the thing that's interesting, Jake, is a lot of the moves that worked out were not my plan A, but I had to immediately go to a plan B, and people didn't realize that it was my plan B, but it worked out, so there was no sense in telling everybody that there had originally been a plan A. For players themselves on the floor, what percent in basketball of players do you think there are that can come down the floor and when the option A is immediately taken away by the defense, they are able to immediately process the option B as if A was never an option?
You hope at this level as professionals that the percentage is higher than less. I don't know if I could put a number on it, Jake. I've never had anybody ask me that. But that's why for my decades of basketball, especially on the women's side, I have advanced and promoted the offensive side of the ball because offense can always make the defense wrong. And so in your scenario where you've got to be able to read the layers of the defense, you've got to be able to have a counter, you got to be able to know, this is taken away, then I go to this option. That requires a lot of work in the gym when nobody's watching. What happens is in game, there's schemes, there's, like I say, under overhead strap, ice jam, switch, drop, the 8 different ways or a variation of that you can guard a ball screen. We don't see all those coverages. But when you do see them, you have to have a counter. So that's why guards are so important because guards have the ball in their hands. Guards make the game easier for their teammates. Guards find the reads, read the second level. A lot of post players aren't responsible for doing those things, but guards have to see second and third level. And when you've got a guard like a Kelsey Mitchell, like a Caitlin Clark, we're going to see tonight in Brittany Sykes for Washington, they can do those things. Those are exceptional, and those are your elite level players.
Debbie, how special for Debbie Antontelli is our guest tonight? Fever, by the way, and Mystics, 7:00. That game gets underway. To put a tie on all of it, back to the Pacers real quick. Just how special is this group? It has dare I say it, it has an 83 NC State, to put it in that language, feel to it in terms of just there's just something about the bond of this group that you feel like you're watching 14-year-old, like 8th grade kids playing together. And I love it. I'm here for all of it.
I am too. And you never know on any given night who it might be. Of course, you expect Tyrese to do what he does. And he does the same thing Caitlin does. He makes the game simpler for everyone around him. It's such an important and valuable quality to have. It's what leaders do. It's what top playmakers do in basketball. It's exciting to watch. And, of course, I'm always rooting for Neesmith because he's from Charleston. He's one of ours, so we love him in the state of South Carolina. And so, Pacers, come on, man. This is so fun. Like, how can you not enjoy watching the incredible drama that these guys play with, but yet it's just making the game easier. Make the extra pass, cut hard, get in the right schemes. I mean, it's a brilliant job by Rick Carlisle and his staff. Jenny Busick on the defensive end, Mike Weiner on the offensive end. I mean, and everyone else that goes with it. Lloyd Pierce, I heard at a clinic last year. That guy sold me on so many different ways to look at the game. I mean, these guys are really experts at what they do. And then the selflessness with which Indiana plays with, it's fun. It's fun to watch, and I'm definitely pulling for them. For somebody who grew up a Knicks fan, they've turned me quickly.
Listen, I'm telling you, the Pacers, I was stunned when I looked it up, Debbie. I mentioned it earlier on the program. Only the Boston Celtics have eliminated the New York Knicks in the postseason in the NBA more than the Indiana Pacers. They're now 6-3 are the Pacers' lifetime against New York. I'll wrap with this. I wanted to give you this opportunity. Fulton, listener of the show, called in yesterday towards the end of the show. Proud as a peacock to let us know that he is super excited. He's been training and working hard. He is doing 3 different events at the Special Olympics over in Terre Haute this weekend, and I told him that we're all pulling for him, but I wanted to give you the opportunity right now with Special Olympics in track and field in Terre Haute at the state level this weekend, Debbie. I wanted to give you the opportunity to wish all of our Special Olympians in the Hoosier State the best of luck.
Jake, that's why I love coming on your show, because as much as we get to talk hoops, we get to talk about a really important platform, and that is Special Olympics. I hope Fulton is listening. I would send out my best to him because I know he's going to do his best. This was my 7th year of 24 hours, nothing but net. I shot in the rain, the thunder, the lightning, the sleet, the snow, even locusts. But we got it done. And we have raised $1.3 million in 7 years shooting free throws through Special Olympics and my 24-hour nothing but net event. And I want to thank you. The state of Indiana is jumping in a big way. We're going to do a lot of fun things. The Horizon League allowed me to present last week at their spring meetings. We got a lot of good stuff going, and I'm pulling for Fulton and all his teammates.
Debbie, you know what your nothing but net campaign and the Indiana Pacers have in common? The thunder doesn't stop either one of them. That's exactly what they have in common, right?
There you go.
Let's go.
That's right. Let's
go.
bring it.
All right, Debbie, I appreciate it as always.
Thank you, Jake.
All right, Debbie Antontelli, friend of the show, joining us here on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line. We'll come back and we'll play a little Bottle Rockets. Eddie, you ready? You ready to get that going? Stephen Holder joins us in 15 as well. You know, thank you to Debbie Antontelli and Stephen Holder going to join us coming up about 10 minutes from now. We'll talk plenty Pacers and Thunder over the next couple of hours. And so they work in a little hold my hand on this song here. Is that how that works on this Bottle Rockets?
Yeah.
Little sample action there.
Yep.
You know, I've never been a country music person, but, and you tell me if this is, I don't know if this is like a weird thing.
I'm not a country music person at all.
I never have been, especially like some of the older country I think I'm a fan of. And, or, you know, I mean, I can respect it. And when I say older country, I'm talking like original Hank Williams, like that, and like Waylon Jennings, you know. But in terms of like kind of the pop country stuff, it feels like summer. That's the thing. When I hear it, it makes me think of summer, like county fairs and just summertime. So I can appreciate that because I love summer. Not like love summer. Love it. I'm a late night guy, so sunsets at 10 p.m. I love everything about it. The other thing also, Pat Dyer, listener to the show, great dude, and runs the, you know, if you go to the movie theater at Keystone, the Landmarks Theater, there's the lounge there, the Indie Lounge. He runs that. He's the bartender in there.
I was about to say, is he the assistant to the assistant manager?
He is. I mean, if this girl can't smell your qualifications. No, Pat is the grand poobah, right? The bartender at the Indie Lounge.
Okay.
And it's great because you can go in there, you can get a drink and then go into the movies. But either way, his son Preston also participating Special Olympics this weekend in swimming. So best of luck to Preston.
Let's go.
So I'd like to wish best of luck to all of the athletes in Special Olympics. And if you know of one that needs that shout out, we'll do it today. Just send it along, and I will occasionally give a different best of luck shout out to a Special Olympian that is going to be participating this weekend. I think it's absolutely fabulous. My sister was very involved in coaching and working with that in high school. Kitsy Chotlis was the director of that program in Washington Township, and I always had kind of a soft spot for all of that. Again, Fever in action tonight. Now, Eddie, did you say your other gig, you have 19 jobs for people that don't know it, but you're about to go down to 18. When is your last day on the part-time job that you'd picked up?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow's your last day.
Mm-hmm.
And do they know that?
They do.
Are they going to have, like, cake? It's cake in the break room. It's Eddie's last day. That kind of thing?
I don't think so.
Are you sure? Do you know? A surprise party?
Actually.
How long have you worked there?
Not very long. 4 months, maybe 5 months.
And you're only leaving because you had other opportunities pop up.
Yes.
And so therefore, and they were aware of this, right?
Yes.
They were nice about it?
Very supportive as well.
Did you notice that they seemed to be jubilant when you told them that you're leaving?
They were very depressed.
I don't know if I listen. And by the speaking of which, just so you know, over the weekend you were on boo duty, right?
Yeah.
Much appreciated. And I told you that I left cat treats under the TV. Now it didn't look like that you got into those.
You didn't
to
tell
distribute.
me. You didn't tell me that.
Yeah, that was in the note I gave you. Obviously,
I didn't see the note.
Okay, but I did notice this. There was. It looked like 2 scoops of the jar of beans in my refrigerator were gone, and 2 beers.
Did not touch either one of those.
I looked in the recycle bin. Now, you did recycle the bottles, which is much appreciated, but I did notice, I say beers. There was 1 empty can of Surfside sitting down there, right? And 1 Rheingeist Truth IPA right there in the recycle bin, which is okay.
I'm telling you, I had to clean up
show
Boo's
sponsor,
mess.
so that's good.
I had to clean up Boo's mess. That was not me.
Boo is well aware of the show sponsor, so make sure that he takes care of that as well, right?
Yeah.
Have you heard much in terms of this series, which gets underway now? I mean, we're 48 hours away from the NBA Finals tipping off for the Pacers and Thunder. Have you heard a lot or paid attention to just the overall prognostication and predictions of it?
Because a lot of people are saying Thunder in 5 or 6.
And
just
I don't
because of
think
how
that
good they are.
I don't think that's a disrespect to the Pacers, right?
I think it's more of a compliment as to how good Oklahoma City is.
Yes. I mean, they're historically good.
And nobody talks about them in that manner. Like, you win whatever it was, 64 games or whatever stupid number that was.
It was 68, wasn't it? 68 and 14?
Yeah, whatever it is. And then They're 12-4 like Indiana in the playoffs, 4-3 against the Nuggets. So you can do the math. They're 8-1 against Minnesota and Memphis. And I think a large part why that game, that series against Denver went 7 games, because I was looking at this last night. If you look at the regular season, so it's an 82-game season, okay? How many games do you think, or not even games, how many minutes over the course of an 82 season do you think they played in clutch situations? Meaning it's a plus or minus, they're within 5 points either side in the final 4 minutes.
So there are 328 possible minutes in the equation here, right?
Sure.
So do you know the answer to this?
I do.
I will say
It's 3,936 total minutes.
Well, no. If you're saying clutch minutes can only be in the last 4 minutes of a game,
You're
that
right.
would be 328 possible.
My bad. I was doing the entire game.
I will say that they played over the course of the year a total of 100 and no, that would be too high. I'll say there were 11 games where it was within 5 in the last 4 minutes. I'll say 46 minutes.
You're on the low side. That's 66, which is still
yeah,
not even close to second place. Like the fact that they've only played 66 total clutch minutes just speaks as to how dominant they have been.
And does that mean advantage Indiana?
That's the one thing I keep going to. Like you look at that Denver series, and Denver was able to steal. I think that was game 1 when they had that miraculous comeback, and kind of Oklahoma City, falters that late, just squanders the opportunity because they didn't have a lot of those chances during the season. And if it gets into a situation where it's a close game late, do the Pacers have the advantage just because they've been there and they've done that?
Stephen Holder, by the way, always clutch, joins us next. 1 o'clock hour underway in Indianapolis. For that matter, it's 1 o'clock hour underway everywhere in the Eastern time zone. Jake Query along with Eddie Garrison here at his Query & Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Pacers wrapping up practice right now. We'll head out to Oklahoma City tomorrow. And then, of course, game number 1, NBA Finals, taking place on Thursday between the Pacers and the Thunder. Joining us now on the Ryan Geist Brewery guest line, of course, ESPN.com, where you can read his work. Yesterday, just about 24 hours ago, as a matter of fact, he was at the private service for Jim Irsay. Stephen Holder joining us on the program. Stephen, I guess I'll begin with that, and that is simply, I did see some people just comment that it was a very well done ceremony, that it was a moving ceremony. Of those that spoke and or just kind of the overall synopsis or summary of yesterday's service for Jim Irsay, what can you tell us?
I think I would agree with all of those descriptions. I think that, when we've all been to really sad funerals, right? I can think of some in my own family, right, that they stick with you because they were just so depressingly sad, and this was not that, like, at all. I mean, we laughed probably more than there was crying in there, and I think that's exactly the essence of Jim Irsay, right? I mean, complicated guy, right? No one's going to argue that. And I love that even his daughters, the pastor, officiating, everyone acknowledged, oh, believe me, this guy there was a lot in this package, believe me. And everyone, or no one, I guess, dodged that fact. And I did love that reality that they brought to it. But they also balanced it by saying, look, even despite all that, he managed to impact the world around him just in the way Jim Irsay made people feel like they mattered. And I think that was really a unique talent of his, because so often people in his realm of the world who are rich, famous, they live in a world that is so different than you and I that they can't relate to you and I, right? And Jim Irsay was the antithesis of that, and I think that really came through. He had a way of making an impression on people and making them feel that they mattered to him, even though he could have carried himself in a way where he was far above that. So that, I thought, was what came through. I would also say, in terms of who spoke, I think it's notable, and very notable, that there were not a bunch of rich and famous people who spoke. I mean, some were rich, certainly his daughters, but it was friends and family. That's who spoke. The only exception to that, I think, would be Edgerrin James. And Edgerrin was as much a friend to him as anybody, so I don't even put him in that class. So that, to me, spoke volumes. The people who mattered most to him were the people who were given the floor, and I thought that was very appropriate.
One of the people, Stephen, that I thought about this in the last week or so, and so much has been said about Jim Irsay and about, his legacy, his passions, his eccentricities, all of those things. And I think as a city, we mourned for the city. I think there were people that had trepidation about where now, just what happens with the franchise itself. One of the people, and I wanted you to expand on this, one of the people that I think publicly we should offer a condolence towards, because I don't know if I did, and I have not read much of this. Pete Ward is an individual that came with the Colts from Baltimore as a young man. He, I believe, is the COO. I think that's technically his title. But he is essentially the chief lieutenant and was for Jim Irsay. And that did not always come with the easiest of paths. I think that was a complicated role. I think it probably at times was an emotional or gut-wrenching role. But he was incredibly loyal to Jim Irsay. I would assume that he was a close confidant and friend of Jim Irsay's. And I think that we think about the business aspect of the loss. And for someone like Pete Ward, we should all hope that there's somebody in our corner routinely the way Pete Ward was towards Jim Irsay. And he is one that I've thought about that probably this city owes both a condolence and a thank you for his service to the franchise throughout the Jim Irsay tenure. Is that all a fair statement?
100%. And I bet there are a fair number of Colts fans who don't even know much about him, if they know his name at all. And I would say, as someone who's known him for a long time, and you know Pete Ward as well, I mean, he is when you were talking, the first thing I was going to say, and you beat me to it, was we should all have a Pete Ward in our lives. And it's true. Like, Jim Irsay would not be Jim Irsay without Pete Ward. He started working for him in 1982. So he came from Baltimore. He came on the Mayflower, not literally, but certainly was one of the original Indianapolis employees by virtue of coming to Indy from Baltimore. So he started working with him, like I said, in 1982. He shared an office, apparently, with Jim Irsay back then, which must have been just unbelievable. But anyhow, you talk about someone who has seen the highs and the lows. I remember after Jim was, after he was arrested for his driving under the influence in 2014, you remember the mugshot. He looked haggard. He looked terrible. Clearly, he was not well, and he was definitely using substances, right? And I would say about maybe 8-9 months or a year later or so, I can't remember. But at some point after that, I had an encounter with Jim, and he hadn't been seen, publicly for a long time. And I saw him, and he looked amazing, and he looked clean, to be completely honest with you, to be blunt. And I remember I pulled Pete aside and I said, Pete, he looks like he's come 1,000 miles. I said, man, this is incredible. He said, we've been through a lot. And he said, he's in a great place right now, and I just hope he stays there. And that moment spoke to me, because it said to me, like, man, he has seen all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly. You're right. We all need someone like that. And sometimes that's just our role in life, is right to be there for someone else when maybe they can't save themselves when they need someone to save them from themselves, right? Sometimes that's what our role boils down to, is being a friend. And you're absolutely right. Pete Ward is a saint, and I said to the person sitting next to me, because Pete did speak during the service, and I thought eloquently so. I said to the person sitting next to me, I said, there's going to be a special place in heaven for that guy because he's been through a lot. There's no question about that.
The Stephen, with that, and then we can move on from this, I guess, but will Pete have the same level of, I guess, responsibilities with Jim Irsay's daughters that he had with Jim Irsay, if you will, because he was kind of a guardian of the franchise?
Yeah. Well, the good news is that he's already worked very closely with the daughters, has for a long time. So I don't think anything's really going to change dramatically there. He has a close relationship with the daughters, as you can imagine. I mean, he's been in their lives, in some cases, maybe before they were even born, in the case of the younger sisters. So I don't think anything changes there. I think they have a great working relationship, and I think they'll be just fine, frankly. I actually believe I'm among the people, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm among the people who believe that the franchise is in great shape. Now, we'll see if there's any consequence from Jim's death from a financial perspective. I don't know anything about taxes and all that stuff. But I would say when it comes to the direction of the team, I have had some conversations since his passing that have given me great confidence about Carly Irsay in particular, and really where they're at and her level of preparedness for this. The other thing I would say is that I thought all the daughters spoke at the service, and I thought that was unique. And in doing so, you got to see each of their unique approaches and personalities. Carly Irsay got up there, and she was very concise and certainly well-spoken and heartfelt, but very concise, businesslike, and she said what she had to say, and she was done. Casey Irsay got up there, and she was very, very emotional. She probably struggled the most to kind of get through it. And then Kaylin Irsay got up there, and Kaylin is the one who is most like her father, at least publicly. And she even said that. She said, "Look, I'm the one who you can't give a microphone to," basically, because she got up there and she just kept talking and talking, and it was great, right? She was telling stories, and it was wonderful. And I think I saw in there the perfect representation of what all the sisters are. And I'm sorry for the long answer, but I'll wrap it by saying this. Carly is going to be the person who she gets stuff done, right? Casey is probably the heart and soul and the emotion behind it all. And then Kaylin is the one who I think will probably, if I had to guess, will be the forward-facing, public-facing sister, right? The one who doesn't mind having a press conference and addressing a topic if it needs to be done, right? She's very comfortable speaking publicly. She's the spokesperson for Kicking the Stigma, for example, all that, right? So it was a really unique little experience seeing all of those contrasts among the three sisters.
Okay, Stephen, one other thing before we segue into Pacers. Stephen Holder, our guest, ESPN.com. He's on the Rheingeist Brewery guest line. Rheingeist, by the way, now top 20, 16th largest craft brewer in the United States and widely available here in central Indiana thanks to our friends at Zinc. Stephen, I noticed at the Pacer game the other night, somebody pointed this out. I kind of got a chuckle out of it, and like 70% flippant and 30% I'm like, that's actually kind of a good point. Anthony Richardson apparently was at the Pacer game, but he was not seated in like the front 5 rows where every other dignitary was. Do we read into that in terms of what that means for his standing within the franchise or the city itself? Sounds ridiculous, but think about it before answering.
No, I think he was in a club seat, box seat, suite or something like that. So I think it's more along those lines. I think there were some other Colts up there as well. So it's possible someone hosted them or they had access to special seating or what have you. So no, I don't read too much into it. Frankly, knowing Anthony the way I do, he might not have wanted to be the center of attention. I don't know if anyone offered him a courtside seat. I have no idea. But it wouldn't stun me if he maybe didn't want to be the center of attention. Part of the problem with Anthony is that he sometimes doesn't fully appreciate just how damn important his job is, and I think maybe that speaks to it. I don't know, but I would say that he wants to kind of blend in and be one of the guys. And the truth is, no, buddy, you're not one of the guys. They drafted you 4th overall, and you're the franchise quarterback, they hope. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on that. I think I say it jokingly, but it's also a real thing too with Anthony.
Okay, let's go to the NBA Finals, Stephen. Your thoughts on this Pacers team and the situation that they're in. You covered part of the NBA playoffs and now the challenge ahead of them in Oak City.
Yeah, I mean, it's all hands on deck, and that's all it is. I mean, they had some nights against the Knicks. They had some nights, and in some of these games they even managed to win, but there were a couple of games in that series where no one could really find their niche and find their groove, except maybe like Siakam, and he would just take over and go win the game, right? Or at least keep them in contention. Well, that ain't going to cut it in this series. So I think it just speaks to the margin for error, which doesn't exist. There isn't one in this series. It's just, that team can match their depth. That team, their defensive intensity is going to test them. They can score from multiple positions, multiple spots on that team. So they have a lot of the same qualities, frankly, as the Pacers. I think the Pacers' depth and maybe their pace and things like that have been the difference for them in these playoffs. But I think those advantages are somewhat blunted by this Oklahoma City team because they can do those things too, or they negate some of the good things that the Pacers do. So they're going to have to bring it, and this is going to be a different kind of challenge. But I also think that if you have watched this team in the playoffs, you know that you can never say never. I wasn't so sure they'd beat Cleveland, frankly. I didn't know that I believed they'd beat Cleveland. And they handled them, to be quite honest. And so, why would you? I mean, because certainly nationally, there is this feeling that this is going to be short and sweet. I do get that sense, this series. But I think if you watch
Stephen, the narrative from people of like the Thunder in 5, Thunder in 6, or even sweep, I haven't heard that much. But
right.
I think that is almost more a testament to Oklahoma City than it is people slighting Indiana.
I agree with that. And that's why I don't think it's anything that a Pacers fan should take personal. All I'm saying is that I think that what these playoffs have taught us or demonstrated is that this team cannot be underestimated. I'm not going to pick them to win the series, okay? I mean, let's be realistic. They're not the favorite for a reason, but I could see this being more competitive than people anticipate. But I agree with you. I think it's an ode and a nod to the Thunder and not a slight on the Pacers. I agree with that.
The thing to me, I'll say concern for lack of a better phrase, that intrigues me, and I've said this a lot, I think the Pacers have gotten to this point twofold, Stephen. Number one, they play a style that is just kind of caught the NBA on its ear. And number two, they didn't really perfect that style until the second half of the season due to injuries in the first half. So therefore, it wasn't until they were really humming that all of a sudden people noticed it, and by then it was too late to get the tiger by the tail. Only problem is Oklahoma City is the one franchise that plays the same style. What say you?
No, that's why I say it kind of negates this matchup. Kind of negates the Pacers' strengths, or at least some of them. So they're going to have to find other ways, to get the upper hand. And I think it was really very simple. I mean, Charles Barkley said this in one of the post games during the Knicks series. He's like, "Look, man, this ain't that hard. It's about pace." I think this was after a Pacers loss, maybe game 5. And he's right. It wasn't that hard, right? It was like, guys, play the way you play and you win. And certainly we're oversimplifying it, but it's also kind of true. Well, you can't – that logic ain't going to fly in this series. So I agree with that completely, which is why I say there's no margin for error. They can't not rebound. They can't have defensive lapses. They can't do all the little things that they may have let slip at times against the Knicks or the Cavs or whoever. All of those things that they were able to overcome, they're not overcoming that against Oklahoma City. So they got to be pristine across the board, and it's going to take a level of discipline that they're going to have to find if they're going to stay in this series.
Stephen, lastly, we were just talking about country music, right? And I was saying
Yep.
I'm not really a fan of country music, but it makes me think of summertime, okay? I love outdoor concerts in the summertime. We just enjoy live music, okay? I want to know, you and I, we've talked about it many times. We've been to one concert together, the two of us. First off, are you typically a concert guy, Stephen Holder?
I haven't been. I don't go to that many concerts, and I don't know why. I should go to more, frankly. Yes,
I was going to ask the best. Okay, I guess two-part question: the worst concert you've ever been to, or the one that was surprisingly the best, where like you just kind of got dragged along, and then you're like, "Wow, that was great," or "I didn't expect that. That was an awesome show."
Okay, so let's see here. I saw. I give you the best, the surprising one first. So I went to see Lauryn Hill in Indianapolis. I don't know, like 6-7 years ago. I can't remember. And I went with no expectations because, like, with her, it's like, is she even going to show up? All right. I don't know if you know about this history of hers where she shows up like 4 hours late to shows or doesn't show up at all. And I think we might have got I'm not kidding. We might have got like a Groupon ticket. And we're like, is Groupon even still a thing?
I just was going to say, is Groupon still a thing?
I got to get on that. I don't know, because now it's killing me. This is what we do during Pacers games, right? We sit there and we ask stupid questions.
That's right.
And we're like, wait a minute, whatever happened to that?
That's right.
So that's the question of the day. Whatever happened to Groupon, which was great, by the way. I'm pretty sure we got a freaking Groupon, which should tell you a lot about her career, and it's in the last like 20 years. Anyway, we go to this thing. I think it was at the Old National, and she showed up. It was really good, and all the Fuji songs and all that. And I was like, wow, okay, I had no expectations. So that was not because, oh wow, Lauryn Hill's a good artist. Like, I'm surprised. No, not in that regard. It's more like, oh, Lauryn Hill showed up and she actually made some effort. Okay, that was good. Because I had friends who I told I was going to this, and they had experiences with her in the past, and they're like, man, you're stupid. Well, I don't know why you'd do that. So, hey, I'm like the one guy in America
who had a
that went to a
positive.
Lauryn Hill
Okay.
concert and was like, it was fine. The worst, this is interesting. I have to think about this. I have a low bar, I guess.
Look,
I don't know.
Look, and it was awesome to say we were there, but the Too Short show that we went to struggled.
It's a
little bit.
candidate.
I mean, there wasn't a lot of concert performing. There was more like just talking to the audience, right?
Right. Like, hey, guys, have another one. You'll
Yeah.
love the show.
Yeah, it was a lot of that for sure.
It's definitely on the list for sure. So yeah, I'd have to go back to some of my like '90s rap shows back in the day. There's probably some doozies in there. You know, where you get like the artist is drunk when he takes
Of course.
the stage or something. You know what I mean? It's like, what are we even doing?
I
here?
went to Invisible Touch Tour Genesis in 1987, which was the
Wow.
big tour. It was at the Hoosier Dome. And the lights came on 80 minutes into it, and they're like, okay, good night, everybody. And everybody thought it was intermission. It turns out Phil Collins had, like, bad food the night before and got food poisoning, and that was it. And it was, I mean, that was like a marquee show, right? Marquee show.
Yeah.
And that was it. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
The Hoosier Dome, a long time ago.
yeah, it wasn't even the RCA Dome yet. All right, Steven,
Right.
what's upcoming in terms of your coverage to ESPN.com? Are you doing any finals stuff?
That's all. I'm waiting to hear on that. We have, not till the home game, so we got a little time still. But I definitely want to go. They don't, we get very territorial at ESPN. I'm on the NFL staff. So it's like, oh, you're the unwashed. This is the NBA Finals. And I'm like, I've covered like 5 of them, but whatever. Anyway, hopefully they find something for me to do and get me in the door. Colts-wise, we got OTAs coming up Thursday, and I want to take a closer look this week. I admittedly had a little conflict last week, so didn't see all of the practice. So I wanted to get a closer look this week and see what we're talking about there. And then next week, 3 days of OTAs. 3 days of mandatory mini camp. So that usually gives you a much broader look at things, and I think better takeaways than the one glimpse that you get each week in OTAs. So anyway, that's what's in the hopper for us.
All right, Stephen, we will look forward to it and then talk to you obviously during OTAs as well. Appreciate the time as always.
All right, you got it.
All right, Stephen Holder joining us on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line. I think I've mentioned before in terms of concerts, by the way, there's 3 categories. There's concerts that were just terrible, concert that was just awesome, and then concert that you went into it with no expectation and were overly pleasantly surprised. Eddie, are you a concert guy?
Nope.
Not at all.
No.
Okay. How many concerts have you been to?
2.
Really?
Yep. And it was the same band.
What band?
It was 5 Seconds of Summer. I was brought along.
Okay. You've literally only been to 2 concerts in your life?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I didn't used to be big into it. I really enjoy it now. Just because, again, I love summer and I want to take advantage of all of the events that take place.
Well, see, your summer thing is concerts. My summer thing is attending baseball games.
That's fair. How many parks have you been to?
Not as many as I'd like. I've been to Wrigley. I've been to Great American Ballpark, obviously. I have technically been to Dodger Stadium or Chavez Ravine, but I've never attended a game there. We went there when we went to California my senior year of high school, and we went to the gift shop, and they let us walk on the top section where the gift
Pretty
shop
awesome,
goes
yeah.
out. Yeah. Let us walk out there so we could see it. Let's see. I've been to St. Louis, the Busch Stadium. I've been to Seattle, to T-Mobile Park. Is there another one I've been to? I can't remember.
Okay. How many teams are there in the majors?
30?
So I'm going to look right now. I'm not going to do it on the air. Now, are we counting defunct parks?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to count the number of parks I've been to. What would you, Eddie, put as the over-under?
I've also been to Arlington Stadium. It was the old
they've
Rangers.
changed like 3 times, right, in the last 10 years?
Yeah, that was in I went there when I turned 21. So that would have been When would that have been? 2019?
What are you putting as the over-under on my total? If you had to guess. I'm going to calculate it here in just a second.
12 and a half?
12 and a half, over-under. You're taking, which one are you taking?
I'll go over.
Okay. I'll let you know, and I want to get back into it. Something interesting I heard about the Pacers last night, and it got me thinking, and it gave me an epiphany.
Oh, I've been to Colorado, too. Forgot
That I'm
about
going
that
to
one.
reset. I've been outside that, but not in it. I've sat outside and had a beer right out front of it, but not been in it. But I'll reset what I think is driving the Pacers next. 22 is the answer, Eddie. 22. But keep in mind, I covered a Major League Baseball team for a couple of years, so that helps.
Yeah, see, I totally forgot
I
about your
cheated
time
there a
in
little
St. Louis.
Okay, last night, I had this epiphany that I shared earlier, and I want to bring it back up again. The Indiana Pacers, in their history, the New York Knicks are a historic NBA franchise. They play in the greatest arena in the world.
The Garden.
And the most historic, certainly. And when you think of Madison Square Garden, you think about all the buzz high, the beehive of activity going on around it, the bright lights and the trains and the horns and the cabs and the people and everything else. And it's, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. And for so many years, for the Indiana Pacers, it was like the little kid that was still trying to get approval from his big brother that had been knocked down and wanted to show that in fact, he could win the game of horse in the driveway. That's what it felt like being a Pacer fan and watching your team going in and taking on the big, bad, mighty New York Knicks. And there was an inferiority complex. This city has always had, we've always had, and we're driven by the fact of, yeah, we might be a flyover town, and yeah, we might be, a Midwestern state. And yeah, our winters might not be the best weather-wise. But darn it, we're pretty proud of who we are, and we're pretty proud as a city, and we like who we are, and we like what we represent, and we've always wanted people who have adopted and taken on the mentality. It's why Reggie Miller became so popular, because he took on that complex of, this is for you, Indiana, we're coming home for you, that kind of thing. Gosh darn it, we're Indiana, and we're proud of it, right? And it still feels like they are, Stephen A. Smith and everybody else. The Pacers are going to be intimidated by the Garden. The Pacers are going to wilt under the pressure of the bright lights, big city. That they can't go in there and win a Game 7 in the Garden, even though they did it a year ago, because it's going to be, the moment's going to be too big for Indiana. And for the sixth time in 9 matchups in the postseason, the Pacers eliminated the Knicks. Only the Boston Celtics have ended a postseason run for the New York Knicks more so than the Indiana Pacers, who now have made a habit of owning New York. It's not Madison Square Garden. It's literally, it might as well be called Market Square Garden, because it's owned by Indiana. Michael Rappaport, who I like a great deal, I think he's very entertaining. He was in a great show that I watched called Atypical, that if you've not seen it, I highly recommend it. But he is a noted New York Knicks fan. He's a lifelong New Yorker. He's got that New York accent and all of it. He loves the New York Knicks, and he loves to bag on places like Indiana. And listen to what he said last night in a podcast he did that I found last night, and that's what led me to the epiphany I will share after you hear from Michael Rappaport.
Reggie Miller and the choking and the Detlef Shrimp. I mean, the Rick Smiths and the Davis boys and the Chris Mullen and the Larry Bird and the Isaiah Thomas and Indiana, man. Indiana. Indiana. Larry Bird. Okay? Sorry. Steve Alford, Damon Bailey, the late, great Bobby Knight. Sorry, he was great. I loved Bobby Knight. But Indiana basketball. Their jump shots, the Hoosiers. That movie, I feel like it's overrated. No disrespect to the great Gene Hackman. It was a brutal, painful loss, and we're not supposed to take it well. And I don't like people mocking, how's your pizza today? Nixon 8, Nixon 9. How's your hot dogs and your pizza today? How's your chicken chopped cheese today? That's what they're saying to Knicks fans. We superseded expectations. We made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. We lost to a better team, a faster team, a deeper team. They were full court pressing Jalen Brunson like it was AAU in high school. You don't see the point guard in the NBA get full court pressed all game, every game. That doesn't happen. But the Indiana Pacers were built to do that, and they did it.
So the New York Knicks now are the ones reeling. The New York Knicks and their fans are the ones now that are looking in the mirror and questioning themselves and wondering where they go from here. And having to defend themselves and not feel very good about things. The Indiana Pacers did that. The Indiana Pacers, who were supposed to be afraid of New York. The Indiana Pacers, who were supposed to be intimidated by the 60-plus win top-seeded Cleveland Cavaliers. The Indiana Pacers, who were supposed to be wilting under the tenacity of Bobby Portis and the prowess of Giannis and the anticipation of the return of Damian Lillard. The Indiana Pacers, who are led by Tyrese Halliburton, who was a 3-star recruit coming out of high school and chose Iowa State over Bradley and North Carolina Charlotte, and got drafted by the Sacramento Kings and played 71 games, and then had the Kings tell him, we're going to go with De'Aaron Fox over you. And they traded him to Indiana, where he came here and had 2 choices: sulk or get on board and make Indiana the place of his redemption tour, and embrace the fact that Indiana embraced him, and take on that mentality of a chip on the shoulder. Pascal Siakam, not a big recruit coming out because he was an international player, goes to New Mexico State, leaves early, goes into the NBA, goes to the Toronto Raptors, wins an NBA title, has to hear about how it was Kawhi Leonard that lifted him. It was Kawhi Leonard that won that title. Gets traded to Indiana and says ahead of time, I'll go there only if it's a franchise that's willing to extend me and bring me on long term. And the Pacers said, yes, we are. And comes here and gets all of the teammates that he has to come to Orlando and spend time with him and bond together, because this is to somewhat the place of his redemption tour. And Pascal Siakam now is part of what made New York feel insecure. Obi Toppin, native New Yorker, plays in Dayton, probably should have won a national title. COVID ends the tournament the year that they're the number 1 overall seed. Gets drafted by his hometown Knicks early in the first round, and then gets buried. Starts 47 games over more than 4 seasons in New York. Gets traded to the Pacers for a Why Not Indiana t-shirt and a gift certificate to the home court shop. Comes here, and in the biggest moment of his time in Indiana, rises to the occasion with block shots, three-point shots, and big-time dunks to send New York home packing, and takes it as part of Obi Toppin's redemption tour of Indiana, of the chip on the shoulder of, I'm not so bad after all. Andrew Nembhard, big-time recruit coming out of high school, 5 stars, top 20 recruit, goes to Florida, transfers to Gonzaga, starts 115 of 131 games in college, wins a ton of games, has to sit through the entire first round and hear guys that aren't even in the league anymore get drafted ahead of him. Doesn't get a guaranteed contract because he's not a first rounder. But the Indiana Pacers like what they see, take him in the second round, immediately give him then a guaranteed contract and say, now it's your time to prove to the rest of the league what they missed out on. And the Indiana Pacers are Andrew Nembhard's redemption story. Aaron Nesmith goes to Vanderbilt as a shooter out of high school in South Carolina. After 1 year, goes into the NBA, gets drafted by the Boston Celtics, has to sit and wait, appears in 98 games total over the course of 2 years. A guy that was a 4-star recruit and a big-time player in college has to sit and watch Romeo Langford and other players take his minutes while he gets buried, and then gets traded to Indiana for Malcolm Brogdon, who comes with half of a Walgreens with him because he's got 10,000 injuries. And yet, the Celtics were able to send him on about his way to Indiana because he'd been buried there. And he comes to Indiana with an unknown future, but he takes Indiana as his redemption tour and takes a chip on his shoulder that this is the place that believed in him, and allows him to go in game 1 and bury New York by making a name for himself under those bright lights, amongst those horns honking and the trains running past, and starts burying threes that helps Indiana go up 1-0 and then win the Eastern Conference. Ben Shepherd, Belmont, no star recruit coming out of high school. Goes to Belmont, plays 4 years, gets drafted by the Pacers. What are they doing drafting a 4-year guy out of Belmont with the second pick they acquired in the first round? And yet, with opportunity comes, Ben Shepherd does exactly what he needs to do to prove to the rest of the league who he is, and Indiana believed in him and scouted him and gave him that choice and that chance. TJ McConnell, written off in Philadelphia, played a ton of games there. Played for his dad in high school, no star recruit, signed with Duquesne for college. Proved himself, went to Arizona, then gets an opportunity in Philadelphia. They consider him a 13th man, and Indiana acquires him
And then Indiana gets Andrew Nimhard and Tyrese Halliburton, and it seems as though McConnell's going to be buried, but every time his name is buried, he comes back even more so. And he's the Chihuahua with the big bite that takes on the personality of the franchise, and the franchise takes on the personality of TJ McConnell. And this is his redemption tour. And then there's Thomas Bryant, who got into the NBA, had kind of a journeyman career based on injury, found some time in Los Angeles, went to Washington, played well, went to Miami, got buried, was written off, gets his opportunity in Indiana, and for that matter, has to sit behind Tony Bradley because of matchup stake in the New York series. But when his number is called, Thomas Bryant has the energy and the three-point shot that he delivers and comes through and is able to say to those other franchises, see, I still have game left in me. And all of this is led by a guy in Rick Carlisle, who had been an assistant with the Indiana Pacers. And when a head coaching opportunity was there, he was told by the Indiana Pacers, we actually are going to do you a favor here because we are going to rebuild this franchise. I'm talking about in tour number 1. We're going to rebuild this franchise, and there's going to be a lot of question marks about the coaches because we're going to have some ups and downs and peaks and valleys, and it's going to do you a disservice as a new coach to have to endure all of that. So he instead goes to Detroit, comes back to Indiana, then goes to Detroit, and then comes back to Indiana, then goes to Dallas, okay? Wins a championship in Dallas, yet things go south in Dallas, gets sideways a little bit with Luka, gets dispatched as this ornery coach, and Indiana gives him his second chance, his third chance in Indiana, second chance as a head coach, and now Rick Carlisle is a mastermind technician that is undergoing his own redemption tour in Indiana. And this Pacers group is a group of players like all of us in life that when things were down and out, they had a choice. Each and every one of them said to themselves, I can wilt under this, I can sulk under this, or I can come back, I can make a name for myself, and I can be part of a bigger effort that is a redemption tour for all of us collectively and put this city on the map once again and let everybody know, yes, we're a big boy town now. And New York, we own you. And Cleveland, we owned you. And Milwaukee, we owned you. And Oklahoma City's up next. And we'll see where the chips fall. But I love everything about it. And when you go into work and there's days when you feel like you got a promotion that you didn't maybe necessarily earn at that point, now you got to earn it and you're a little bit nervous, you're a little bit intimidated, or on days when you simply feel like you're just not having the best of days and that inferiority complex kicks in, then think about the Indiana Pacers and the way they've approached it. This team is built on believing in themselves when others cast them off. And that's why Thursday night they're going to play in the NBA Finals, and I love it. fired up. And, like, win, lose, or draw. I mean, if the Pacers win, I've already thought about what the parade route would be. I think you start in, man, it's hard to not incorporate the Fieldhouse, but yet that doesn't then have, like, for the speeches and everything else, it doesn't include enough people.
You know what sucks right now, Jake? Georgia Street's all torn up. That would be probably a key part of the route if it was not torn up, right?
Yeah, but you can't take, like, floats across Georgia Street. I mean, I guess you could, but that's not wide enough, right? Now, Georgia Street is my idea, by the way, that I've had forever. Because Georgia Street was incorporated the way it is based on sports, because it was originally developed as it is to connect the Fieldhouse to the convention center for the Super Bowl in 2012. It is my belief that Georgia Street should be, and I've already...
The Fieldhouse or Lucas Oil?
The Fieldhouse.
Okay.
When the Super Bowl was here in 2012, they wanted to incorporate, because they wanted to incorporate, obviously the sport epicenter at that time was Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and then you had Lucas Oil Stadium, which is the convention center, right, connected to it. So Georgia Street was designed and developed to be the entertainment district that would connect the two so that sporting events, regardless of which one you were at, you could have concerts and whatever else and outdoor restaurants and bars along Georgia Street there, and the heater lamps and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, because they already have the John Wooden, the weird legs chopped off statue there, I believe that Indianapolis should have sports statues that connect from Gainbridge Fieldhouse to Lucas Oil Stadium. You have Peyton Manning at Lucas Oil Stadium, so therefore probably Reggie Miller would be appropriate outside Gainbridge.
Slick.
Well, so hear me out here. So therefore you have one exception that you make of the two statues, one on each end, of somebody who made their name representing the two representative franchises and representing the city of Indianapolis in it. And Reggie and Peyton have that same, obviously, badge. Then you connect those two statues with sports legends that are born, raised, or indigenous in their upbringing to Indiana. So that would include Slick Leonard, Oscar, in no particular order, Oscar Robertson, Oscar Charleston, Major Taylor. Those are the big ones. And then if you want to start to incorporate franchise players, if the Colts win another Super Bowl and there's a quarterback you want to put there, fine. Or if the Pacers win it all and Tyrese Halliburton eventually, fine. But those are the names that should be there. But at any rate, I think the parade, if the Pacers were to win it, cart well before horse, I realize. But I would say that you start probably on Pennsylvania, up near the American Legion Mall, the Indiana War Memorial, and you go down Penn, past the Fieldhouse, and then probably across, you would think the Circle, but this thing's been torn up now for 19 years. So then across and then back up Meridian, back to the War Memorial, and that's where you then have the speeches and the dancing and everything else. But, 4 more games, 4 to go, obviously. We have tickets to give away for Counting Crows, correct?
And the Gaslight Anthem.
Who
They
you
are
just
performing
heard, right?
together. Yep, they are performing together at the Everwise Amphitheater at the White River State Park.
And this concert is going to be, I had the date just before me,
June
2
14th.
seconds ago. I'm looking at it right now. Saturday, June the 14th. So that is the night after game number 3, I believe, correct? Or game 4? It is a Pacers home game on Friday the 13th. That I know. That sounds ominous, doesn't it?
It does.
I shouldn't have said it that way. June 13th, Pacers home game. Although it could be bad luck for the Thunder, right?
Like very well could be.
June 14th, Counting Crows. I was going to do this trivia style. Matter of fact, I'm still going to do it trivia style. 239-1070 is the telephone number. I have a fabulous trivia question. Fabulous. And it's going to test whether or not you've been listening to the show for a while today. If you've been listening for a while today, your loyalty could pay off for you with the following trivia question, which another brain dropping, and I was so proud of it. I was so proud of it. So let's see who we have here lined up to try to win the tickets. I will let Eddie Garrison, who is currently manning the phones, make his selection. Okay? I will let him make his selection. By the way, somebody just pointed out, what about a John Wooden statue? There's already a John Wooden statue. That's what it said on Georgia. He's talking to 4 players who all had their torsos chopped off. Eddie, tell me just give me a hand signal here on which line we are going with to begin as Eddie is working the phones here. We'll go with Jeff. Jeff, how are you?
Great. How are you?
You know, I can't complain. I'm in a good mood today, Jeff. How about yourself? You in a good mood? Everything going all right?
Hey, I'm always in a good mood if I wake up.
Well, you sound like a nice guy. Are there days where it's questionable that you'll wake up?
Some days it's a little tough.
Okay. How old a fella are you, Jeff?
I'm actually 64. You actually know me. I just saw you last weekend, I think, at Park. I work at Cathedral part-time athletic office.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You drive a bus around, is that right?
I used to. Now I do, I help with football, and I used to coach girls basketball.
And matter of fact, Jeff, I owe you an apology, and let me tell you why. Let me tell you what happened, and you tell me if you remember this, okay? So I'm at dinner, right? I was getting ready to go. I believe when I saw you, we were getting ready to go over to maybe the Indy Ignite, it might have been, or there was something taking place up north. And so I'm having dinner, and Shannon's there with me, and we're leaving. I think it was actually – it might have been the night of qualifying or just before qualifying at the track maybe, right? So it's all kind of a blur.
Yeah, it was a week ago Friday.
Okay, so I'm walking out, and you stop me, and so we chat, we catch up. Hey, good to see you, da-da-da. And then we're leaving, and as we're walking away, and it was very crowded in the place, right? And we're walking away, and as we're walking away, Shannon says, that was very rude. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, that guy put his hand out to give you a 5 or shake your hand upon the departure of your conversation, and you didn't acknowledge it. And I said, well, I didn't see it. If I'd have seen that, I would have gladly said, good to see you, and shaken hands. But she noticed it, and I apologize. I didn't see the extension of the hand, and so I'm asking that you retract to everybody that I was a jerk when I walked away.
Hey, you owe me, man.
So you did notice.
Kidding. I don't even remember that. I remember saying, you need to get, because I know how busy you are, because you had a busy weekend, I'm sure. So, and I actually don't even remember that part.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad, because then I felt like a jerk. All right, here's my question for you, all right? I mentioned this earlier in the show. I find it a fascinating trivia question. The Indiana Pacers are getting ready to play in the NBA Finals. The first 2 games are in Oklahoma City. That we know. Game number 1 is Thursday night. When they come back here for game number 3, it will be how many times, and by that I mean how many different NBA Finals series will have had a game played in the city of Indianapolis, Indiana?
Man, I actually was working in the yard and I wasn't listening earlier.
The obvious answer is how many, if you include this year.
Oh, if I include this year?
Yes.
Once.
If you include this year, how many times have the NBA Finals been played in the city of Indianapolis, including 2025? You've obviously got 2000, right?
Yeah, that's the only other time
okay.
we're in the NBA Finals.
I learned this yesterday, Jeff. I found it fascinating. In 1955, the Fort Wayne Pistons made the NBA Finals, but they were building the Fort Wayne Coliseum, and they were doing renovation to it in the postseason because they did not anticipate that the Pistons would make it into the finals. They already had the construction aligned to take place. Thus, the Pistons could not play at home, and the 1955 NBA Finals between the Syracuse Nationals and the Fort Wayne Pistons was actually played at the Indiana State Fairgrounds Coliseum in Indianapolis. Thus, 55, 2000, and 2025. But, Jeff, just because I didn't shake your hand and I feel bad about it, I'm going to send you to the Counting Crows, all right?
I appreciate it, Jake. Thank you so much.
All right, no problem, man. Enjoy the show for certain. Scott Agnes joins us other side.
I love this song. I can't deny that I love this song. Two of my favorite songs of the 80s, this and Electric Avenue by Eddie Grant.
I knew you loved the song, Jake, when I queued it up, and I went to just a random part, and you were just right there on the Johnny on the spot, quoting it like it was.
You know,
what was that song that you were singing to Michael Young, track dude, on your trip back?
No More Questions by Eazy-E.
The toilet, as JMV coins it.
Yeah, that was No More Questions by Eazy-E, and I was all over that.
You were.
You were impressed deep down, right?
I was a little impressed, yeah.
I also like.
You even got the finger into it.
Oh, I mean, you gotta vibe with it, right?
Right.
I also am a fan of, because this also, when Michael and I were driving back, we had just the music on shuffle, and another great song.
No. You had the music on shuffle.
Of course,
Michael did not have the music on shuffle.
No, Michael Young's got a pretty eclectic taste. Michael Young, if you've never traveled with him, and bless you, the one thing about Michael Young, track dude Michael Young, he was a longtime music programmer in radio, and he is into record stores. He collects vinyl. He has like 3,000 vinyl albums, which is great, except for that, like any song that comes on, and he'll, like Rockwell right there, and he'll say, "Oh yeah, this album, this was track 8. What was your favorite song from the album?" I'm like, "From the album? What are you talking about? It's a one-hit wonder. I have no idea anything else this guy did." But one of the songs that came on that I love, and it definitely got turned up, was Mexican Radio by Wall of Voodoo. Another great 80s jam.
So basically what I'm getting at here is Michael Young is the music version of You with Landmarks?
Yes, that is exactly correct.
Or cemeteries?
I'm not kidding you.
And famous people buried in those cemeteries?
When we went to the Thermal Club in Southern California, which is like near Coachella, I mean, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's an hour outside of Palm Springs, California. And we're in this tiny town, like Indio, California. And Michael knew about a record store, and we went in. He's like, "Oh yeah, they've got an alternate pressing, the Norwegian press of the Who from 1968 that I want to buy. It's the guy's got it selling for $12 and it's worth $40."
So okay? You're impressed by his ability to go to Google and like do some forward research?
No, trust me, he knows well beyond that, because I mean I think he's in some sort of a
Facebook cult.
Yeah, he's like in some Reddit thread of 19 other people that also are looking for the 13th Floor Elevator album that people want. You know what I mean? Which is apparently his creme de la creme. Everywhere we go, he's like, they don't have the 13th floor elevators. Okay. Joining us now on the Ryan Geist Brewery guest line, and I'm sure thrilled to be doing so based on that segue, Scott Agnes is with Fieldhouse Files. Scott, your favorite one-hit wonder song of the 80s would be what?
Not my cup of tea. I'm not sure. Couldn't tell you.
Who did that one? I'm just kidding. I thought you were going to say Coffee in Bed although that wasn't a one-hit wonder. Brass Coffee in Bed. Okay, so let's get to this. This run for the Pacers, is this a one-hit wonder? Did everything fall into line for them, or have they taken the Eastern Conference on their ear now, where in a copycat league we're going to see people playing to the Pacers style as opposed to, them being the outlier with this pace?
Yeah, I think the pace is more modern style. Where they are different from many of the teams, Jake, that are trying to play more modern, is they really draft and go after those 6'8" wings, long wingspans. It's the Orlandos, Torontos, for example, that stand out. Pacers haven't done that, but they've certainly leaned to kind of the pace that we saw back with, what was it, 6 seconds or less with the Phoenix Suns and Mike D'Antoni a couple decades ago. It's kind of come back to the norm. And here's the thing Pacer fans have to be prepared for. OKC loves it just as much. In fact, their pace is better than the Pacers in the playoffs. Their fast break points is higher than the Pacers. That's what makes this matchup so intriguing for one of many reasons.
I want to get to this with Oklahoma City, Scott. And there's a little bit of Oklahoma City is very offensively prolific, but I don't think, certainly I have not, discussed enough their defense. Now, when you look at Oklahoma City, do you believe did they play a very good schematic team defense, or are they a collection of guys that are all Neesmith, Nembhard level dogs defensively?
Yeah, they got that, the latter. Absolutely. They have several guys on the All-NBA defensive team. I think you'll see Jalen Williams on Pascal Siakam. We know, and then one of the big differences from last year is they added Isaiah Hartenstein, who we're all familiar with New York previously last year. They added Alex Caruso, who's just like TJ McConnell, where he's all over, a pest, and we'll switch on to different players. And then their best defenders is probably Lou Dort, who's best friends, by the way, with Benedict Mathurin. They grew up together. They're best friends from Montreal. That's kind of one of the subtle plays. I think this is something you'd appreciate this. Tyrese is the only Team USA member in the finals. There are 4 with Canada when you add in the Pacers guys along with OKC. But to your original question, no, they have a collection of just incredible defenders. So as good as they are offensively, and they have the top scorer in the league in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they are even better defensively.
Is there an element of, Scott, what I've been saying, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Scott Agnes, our guest, Fieldhouse Files on the Rheingeist Brewery guest line. Is this when you go to the State Fair and they have those mirrors that you can look at and it makes you look a little bit bigger than you are?
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of what Indiana is facing in this matchup? A team that does exactly what Indiana does, but does it with just a little more size?
That's a great analogy there. I have to think about that one for a second. What has made this Indiana team special, and I think the OKC, is they've done it when counted out individually. Every one of these players, basically, outside of maybe on the other side, maybe a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, all these guys were discounted where they were, right? And they got a new opportunity, in this case with the Pacers, and to maybe your larger point, have swelled up and made the most of this greater opportunity and become a better version of themselves. And then they've leaned into the team element as well. I think one of the great things about watching OKC Thunder basketball games is after they win, and they did it 68 times this season, they celebrate together. One of their big things that they always did was rally around the sideline reporter for TV. And so whomever is getting interviewed, which oftentimes it's SGA, there might be the entire team or 6, 7, 8 guys around them because they're enjoying the moment as a group. That's what I think about with OKC first.
What player for Indiana, I have one in mind here. The obvious answers here are going to be Siakam and Halliburton, right? But what player for Indiana needs to most arrive at the moment? How do I word this? Because of the fact that the biggest challenge awaits them. I guess that's a better way of saying it. Which Pacer starter, when you look at matchups, has, hey, Eddie, can we just, with the bag there of chips, can we either just go ahead and put that down or fold that up? Sorry about that. Okay, so, Scott, which player for the Pacers is the guy that has the biggest challenge in front of them matchup-wise?
Matchup-wise, I think it will be Nesmith in particular, right? I think he'll get the bulk of the load on SGA. But let's go a little bit different. I'm going to go Miles Turner, right? He's a guy that's been here, knows exactly what this team is about, and he's got a difficult challenge in store for him with Isaiah Hartenstein and Holmgren in there. They got to rebound in this series. They can't give up those offensive rebounds. And I think he's going to be big on the perimeter, the way in which this team wants to play. It's spread 5. Like, they are going to try to minimize Halliburton, and I'm talking force him to play different ways. I'm not even just saying, like, not get as many shots up or not get to the paint as much. They are going to try to interrupt everything Halliburton tries to do because they realize that's a direct reflection of what the team has to do. So that's where I think of Miles Turner, who can knock down shots in the pick and pop, who can grab rebounds, and needs to win his matchups inside in this series.
Do you think, is there more pressure on the Pacers or Thunder?
I think the Thunder here. Best team in the regular season, quote-unquote best player in the league, even though I'm Team Jokic still. They have home court advantage. They're one of the heaviest favorites I think I've seen in NBA history to win the series. They've been dominant at home, dominant against the Eastern Conference. I think this is all about the Pacers wanting to go in there, introduce themselves to a national audience, and play spoiler.
Yeah, I think if they're going to – I said this going into New York as well. If there's one to get, it's game one, is it not? You want to get one of those first two, and it always feels like game one is the one that you can sneak in and get.
The reason I'd lean towards that is it's the game where you know least about each other. You haven't showed your hand just yet. And the other thing is, it's the old thing we talked about all the time here with Colts and their opponent, the rust versus rest. And they've been sitting out for even longer. Many would say they'd want to go right into the series and carry the momentum after a couple days off, obviously. They're going to have at least a week off here between games. So to your point, absolutely, game one is the one you want to get, split the series, and come back to Indy and take care of business.
Scott Agnes is our guest. Fieldhouse Files is where you can read his work. Pacers at Oak City coming up Thursday, game number 1. Scott, this particular team, I thought Pascal Siakam, in getting the MVP for the Eastern Conference Finals, I think Halliburton thought he was going to get it. You saw that video was going around, Halliburton kind of stepping up. But to me, Siakam was the most valuable player, not necessarily because of the games themselves, but just because of the and look, I will eat crow with – I like barbecue sauce, so we'll put that on there. But I was a little hesitant to give him Siakam. I was worried that they were going to give him a 5-year deal and what that looked like on the back end. Obviously, it's paying dividend right now, so all is forgiven there, and I was wrong with that. But I think he's a valuable player because of the leadership he has shown them, because he's been there before, and he theoretically has been the guy that has said, we're not going to celebrate yet. We're not going to celebrate yet. And that goes a long way. Is Indiana still, do you believe, sticking with that same mentality, or is there a complacency that can set in based on the celebration from the other night?
No, I think you absolutely stick to that mentality. Last series, it was a 13-day battle. I don't know how many days there are in this series, but I'm sticking with that mantra. And the other thing, too, to everything you just said, I want to say that was the same mentality as well last season. So they haven't changed. They haven't figured anything. That's been Siakam's mentality. They would get beat by 10, 15 points in last year's playoffs, and he said, hey, it's just one game. They would win by double digits. And he said, hey, it's not going to change anything. It's not worth 2. We still have to go handle our business. So to your point, generally, I would have expected Halliburton to win the conference final MVP, by the way. Appropriately named Larry Bird. It was just too bad that he's kind of moved away from basketball, because how sweet would it have been to do it in Indiana, to do it with Reggie there, to do it with Herb Simon there, and to do it with the guy that's kind of become the face of the franchise and such now with Halliburton. But one more thing on Siakam. The thing I appreciate most is early on, when he arrived here last year, obviously it was right before the trade deadline, he purposely didn't want to ruffle any feathers, get in the way, and quickly adapted his game, because he's more of a slow, half-court, methodical type guy in the post, in the mid-range. But then he saw holes where he could step up. He saw areas where he could lead. So while he is a quiet leader, he has spoken up way more than I think the team or myself even certainly knew he had it from within. And he was the guy that hosted guys down to Orlando and then hosted the team for a preseason camp. All those have gone a long way to where this team is today.
Were you surprised, by the way, that say, Larry Bird was not there?
I was not. No, I think he's just grandpa now and kind of away from basketball. When he wasn't at the NBA celebration at the All-Star game in Cleveland like 3 years ago when they celebrated the 75 best players, I think that told me all you needed to know, because why wouldn't you want that? It's a rare time for the greatest of the great to be in all one room, to be in one photo, to have a couple of dinners. He's still a consultant for the team. I think I've seen him around a couple times each year, but I think that's just about it. He's kind of removed himself from basketball, moved on to a new chapter of living away from the spotlight and being grandpa.
And by the way, did I see that the Pacers are going to take staff members to Oklahoma City?
Yeah, so Herb Simon, and he did this back in 2000 when they went to Los Angeles, a much longer flight. Employees were given the option to attend either Game 1 or Game 2. And so what a spectacular opportunity for all those full-time employees, a charter flight, and then a game ticket as well.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. All right, Scott, in terms of your coverage of Fieldhouse Files, tell me what we're looking at.
Yeah, so I am back. I will be down there in Oklahoma City providing full coverage. I'll be at the Fever game tonight, then head down there tomorrow. But I just got several things in store that I'm trying to cook up and complete here that I think fans will enjoy to learn even more about what this team is made up of and how they got to this point after some of the bottom out, right, with 3 straight years in the lottery to now this. And to me, it all starts with bringing back Rick Carlisle with the assist of Larry Bird.
Do you drive, by the way, or fly to Oak City?
I will be flying, even though I did consider it just given the fact that there are no nonstop flights.
I'm going to get – okay, so you got to – I'm assuming – here's my two guessing games. I'm going to guess that you fly through Dallas. Is that right?
Ding, ding, ding.
Okay. And then the drive, and we'll have to look this up. I'm going to guess – it's a rough guesstimate here. I'm going to say that it is is 11 too heavy? I'm going to say 11-hour drive to Oklahoma City. Do you have a guess there, Scott?
I know, so I've looked into it.
Okay, what was it? Am I in the ballpark?
To me, it's 11 if you factor in gas and stops for food.
Okay.
So you nailed it.
So 9.5 for me. That's cool. Get the man. Yeah, you get the canteen. You're good to go. All right, Scott. We appreciate it, man.
All right, thanks, Jake.
Scott Agnes joining us. Ryan Gus Brewer Gustin. By the way, Eddie, I didn't mean to call you out because I can't blame you for eating the ketchup Cheetos. I couldn't tell if you were digging through the bag or trying to fold it into some sort of a perfect square.
No, I was just putting my hand in there.
But it was one of those things that all of a sudden, once I heard it, I couldn't unhear it.
I know you're very sensitive.
I am, and so I'm actually correct.
Have like
sugary taste to it. Okay, it sounds terrible. There's nothing about it that sounds inside not American. Again, ketchup bonkers, and I think you knew on your face like a dog. I don't fixate on stuff much at all.
It would take up the rest of the 48 minutes that we have on the show.
Washington Mystics. Eddie, by the way, with his ketchup Cheetos, will have the pregame coverage of that. That gets underway at what time?
Pregame coverage will start at 6:45. Jake.
6:45. World of sports. That was a bit of an anomaly, but it found. By the way, when you feel that hot wind on your shoulder, Time to grab a Surfside, right?
That's right. Light and easy, Jake.
Or Rheingeist.
They
either
go
one.
down so smooth.
Cincy Light, also good. Either one of them. You know, one of the things that I think is hard to come to grips with to an extent. A lot of life and a lot of sports in general are, you know, just the frequent wondering of what could be, what could have been. And at the time, and there's a lot of hindsight 2020 in the world of sports as well. And at the time that it happened, it was the right move. It just was. And I'm talking about the release of Peyton Manning. You know, I don't need to go down that rabbit hole of, we all know the circumstances. And I recall at the time when Peyton Manning ultimately retired from the NFL, going to his press conference and asking him, and I can't remember if I asked him like in the press conference or if it was afterward, he was kind of standing around and talking to everybody and whatever else. But I recall asking him about, you know, where he would live and whether or not he would come back and live in Indy. And he said, you know, I've got like 3 hometowns. I mean, I've got New Orleans, I've got Knoxville, I've got a place in Chattanooga, Denver now, Indianapolis. And I never really thought of it that way because we in Indianapolis just assumed that because he spent the majority of his career in Indianapolis, that Indy is the place that is the most special to him. And as I understand it, that is not to say that he was not there, but from everyone that I talked to, I do not believe that he was at the Jim Irsay service yesterday. I think it would be very unfair to speculate as to why that would be or draw a conclusion there. Because I think he has a great respect for and love for Jim Irsay. But at the same time, to be fair, I think that Peyton Manning might have represented more to Jim Irsay than Jim Irsay did for Peyton Manning. That's not a disrespect on either side, but Manning represents the greatest era of the professional career of Jim Irsay. And while Irsay represents the greatest era of professional longevity for Peyton Manning, Manning won a Super Bowl elsewhere as well. And one of the things that I always thought about when Manning was released here was what it could have potentially been costing the city long term. We should be reading about Marshall Manning getting ready to take over as the quarterback at Park Tudor. We should be thinking about or hearing about Peyton Manning, you know, sitting courtside and getting on the microphone at the Pacer game for the NBA Finals. And the latest, Peyton Manning has joined an ownership group in Denver for the NWSL. That is, if I'm not mistaken, I'm assuming that this to be the case, the NWSL is the National Women's Soccer League, I assume, correct?
That is correct.
And so Peyton Manning is part of the ownership group of that. That's not overly surprising. I mean, that's very cool. But his quote, "It's a real honor to be part of something so meaningful to the Colorado community. I'm proud to support the growth of women's sports and excited to help build a club that our city and our state can rally behind," end quote. That right there, I think it does. While people hear, you know, the Manning cast would have been still done like from Williams Creek. You know what I mean? And these things, Peyton Manning owes this city nothing and has done remarkable things towards the city of Indianapolis, in which he still has obviously a love affair and a strong connection. But it does make you wonder of all of the different things and what life would be like if Peyton Manning had left on his own terms from the city of Indianapolis and the Indianapolis Colts. And yes, I do not believe that he would have won another Super Bowl here. I thought that roster was just such that they were depleted and they were lacking in the areas. As he was coming back from that neck injury, he needed a team that was built differently than the one that he would have finished with in Indianapolis. But nonetheless, I saw that, found it interesting.
Secondly, our baseball competition that we have, Eddie.
Between you, me, and listener Chad?
That's correct. Listener Chad. So, again, for those that are unfamiliar with this program, we at the beginning of the year, myself, Eddie, and then Chad, the listener who called in, we each got to pick 2 teams. The only criteria that was part of this was it had to be a team who was listed in the preseason as projected to win 85 games or fewer. And you could pick 2 teams of that. Eddie had the first.
No.
Chad had the first pairing pick, then Eddie, then myself. Chad and whoever has the highest win total at the end of the year wins our gentleman's bet. So Chad opted with the Cincinnati Reds, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep.
And
the first pick.
Now his first pick, the Reds, they've been okay. They're at 29-32. He has 29 wins there. Then a bit of a drop-off. He took the Colorado Rockies. Now, they are historically bad. They are currently at 10-50. Historically bad. He has 39 total wins. But, Eddie, they made a quick move in the left lane, did they not?
Somewhat, Jake. I don't know if you want to call it a quick move, but yeah, a little bit of a move. The blinker may have turned on once. You know, you're driving and you think about getting over it, and you're like, yeah, I'll just stay here, you know?
Yeah. Now, Eddie went with the Toronto Blue Jays, who got off to a slow start. Toronto's kind of back in the mix here, right? They've won 5 straight. So I think you're pulling away with this. You've got Toronto at 31 wins, and then you went with the Miami Marlins, did you not?
I did. They, by the way, just lost the 3-game series to the Colorado Rockies.
Okay, so you are at 54 total wins.
The only second time this year that Colorado has won a series.
We can write Chad out of this equation, right?
I don't think so.
Okay. I went with the Chicago White Sox only because I believe I took the White Sox, right?
You did?
And then I went with a team that at first I thought was going to do okay. And now the bottom's fallen out. So you're at 54. I am sitting, the White Sox have what, 18 wins? And then I've got the Athletics at 23. So you are 13 wins to the good here. This is over, right?
No, it's not over yet. Anything can happen. It is the game of baseball. You never know who could be a buyer, who could be a seller.
How about the Detroit Tigers?
Wild. Absolutely wild.
Were they thought to be this good?
So they made the playoffs last year, obviously, and they made it to the American League Championship Series, the ALCS. But I don't know if it, like this year, I think people may have viewed them as a one-hit wonder potentially last year because, like Indiana, like Oklahoma City, they don't really have a superstar.
Like Mexican Radio from Wall of Voodoo.
There you go. They have they've got Tarek Skubal, who's the best pitcher in Major League Baseball, and that's about it. They're just a really good team. They have a good collection of guys that, with timely hitting, they find ways to get on base. They score runs, and they've got one of the best pitching staffs in all of the baseball. So that right there is their recipe for success.
Now, meanwhile, the other thing that intrigues me in Major League Baseball is the Dodgers and just the NL West in general, right? Dodgers, Padres, Giants. Is it possible 3 of the 5 best teams, 6 best teams in baseball are all in one division?
It's certainly been the case the last couple of years, at least with the Padres and the Dodgers, and you've gotten the rise of the Diamondbacks as of late. I tell you what, though, the Dodgers have been absolutely plagued by injuries. They spent all this money this past season, again, to help aid that because they dealt with pitching injuries last year, and they're dealing with more pitching injuries this year.
The
Mookie
Cubs,
Betts, by the way, stubbed his toe, fractured it. So Mookie Betts right now has a bum toe.
Did he hit it in the middle of the night getting up to use the restroom?
No idea.
Okay. The Cubs, 15 games over 500. Legit Eddie here to stay, or also a kind of a surprise, right?
Kind of a surprise to me because I look at that pitching staff and I'm not overly impressed. Like they lose Justin Steele. Other than that, they don't have a ton, but they are very, very tough, especially late in games. Like they're really good at finding ways to score runs. Like they lead the league in runs scored after the 7th inning, and it's because they don't go away. They're just on you the entire game. And even though they score 7-8 runs, they're very, very capable of giving up just as many because their bullpen has not been consistent, but they're getting somewhat of consistency from their starting pitching. But the addition of Kyle Tucker and the development and maturity of Pico Armstrong has been a godsend for them at this point of the season so far.
Hey, Jake, great show today. Thank you. Glad
Just
you played
today?
the Michael Rappaport meltdown.
Just today?
That's right. We set the standard low at the beginning of the week so that by Tuesday we're ripping and roaring, right?
That's right.
I was at the Genesis concert, also at the Dome. Yes, I'm telling you, Genesis played for like 90 minutes, and then Phil Collins was sick, and everybody went home. That was the same night, by the way, that Genesis concert in 1987. That same night, Ohio State defeated Iowa in the Big Ten, which put Indiana back into a first-place tie in the Big Ten standings. I remember that on the way home. But my worst concert ever, this is from the text I'm reading, this is fabulous, was Two Live Crew in early 1991 in Gary, Indiana, just weeks after they barely avoided jail for obscenities during a show. They censored themselves the entire time, and it was a 45-minute concert. The crowd was in an uproar. Undercover cops were also there. Total debacle. That's beautiful.
Sounds like this program, right?
That's exactly right. Well, the Michael Rappaport thing, if we censored that every time that he dropped an F-bomb, it would have been like 30 seconds instead of a minute and a half, right? That was just
Larry
beautiful.
Bird. Okay. Sorry.
Bobby Knight also. He threw Bobby Knight under the bus and then felt bad about it, right?
Sorry. Yeah.
He threw – Michael Rappaport was so upset at Indiana beating the Knicks that Damon Bailey caught strays. Do we have that where he
Detlef
mentions –
Shrimp caught a stray.
Detlef Shrimp. He calls him Shrimp. Here we go.
Reggie Miller and the choking and the Detlef Shrimp. I mean, the Rick Smiths and the Davis boys and the Chris Mullen and the Larry Bird and the Isaiah Thomas and Indiana, man. Indiana. Indiana. Larry Bird. Okay. Sorry. Steve Alford, Damon Bailey, the late, great Bobby Knight. Sorry, he was great. I loved Bobby Knight. But Indiana basketball, their jump shots, the Hoosiers, that movie, I feel like it's overrated. No disrespect to the great Gene Hackman. It was a brutal, brutal, painful loss, and we're not supposed to take it well. And I don't like people mocking, how's your pizza today? Nixon 8, Nixon 9. How's your hot dogs and your pizza today? How's your chicken chopped cheese today? That's what they're saying to Knick fans. We superseded expectations. We made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. We lost to a better team, a faster team, a deeper team. They were full court pressing Jalen Brunson like it was AAU in high school. You don't see the point guard in the NBA get full court pressed all game, every game. That doesn't happen. But the Indiana Pacers were built to do that, and they did it.
Now, Eddie, with that said, do you happen to have the breaking news sounder? The Pacers aren't even playing today. They're in the air on their way to Oklahoma City, and they're already making impacts in the NBA. Because we'll tell you what just happened next. Perhaps the Pacers started the fire. Tom Thibodeau has been relieved of his duties as the head basketball coach of the New York Knicks. Thibodeau, who is clearly a gifted coach, however, you have to wonder if, and I know that this is not an original thought or narrative, but does his coaching style wear out teams late in the year where there becomes a glass ceiling for them? He led the Knicks to their first 50-win season in several years, I believe. He made the playoffs in, it's funny because I mentioned earlier, you think that the Knicks are a big-time historic franchise of greatness, but, I mean, they have not won a title in 51 years. They had their first East Finals appearance in 25 years. That's hard to believe. They made the playoffs in 4 or 5 years, and he had consecutive 50-win seasons for the first time for the franchise in over 30 years. So Tom Thibodeau can coach. I just think that one of the things about him, to me, that was, if I was a Knicks fan, would have been uber frustrating, was the fact that late in the year, he started to go more to his bench and use bench players, and they played pretty well. And you wonder why he would not have done that earlier and perhaps spelled some of the legs of his primary, starting guys. It is my belief, and I may well be wrong on this, because they were not too far off, admittedly, and they are obviously a franchise with very good players right now. But I think it is going to be very difficult for the New York Knicks to find any sort of consistent runs towards the top when Jim Dolan is their owner. Because Dolan is, by all account, difficult to work for, difficult to work under, and I just think is just too involved, frankly.
He's a meddler?
He's a meddler. And, he's entitled to that. He's the owner of the franchise. I get it. But that's interesting. Tom Thibodeau out as, again, I mean, think about how many coaching eras the Pacers might have ended, right? Wasn't Pat Riley's last game against the Pacers the Ewing finger roll miss, I think?
Wasn't Michael Malone's one of Michael Malone's final games against the Pacers?
That might be right.
The head coach of the Denver Nuggets?
Yeah, I think you're right? Boy, how weird was that they made that coaching change, and then all of a sudden they took Oklahoma City to 7 games. Does the way Oklahoma's, you wonder with Indiana, do the Pacers make tweaks and try to find vulnerabilities of Oklahoma City based on things that happened to Oak City this year? Or do they just say, this is who we are and we are, we're good to go with this. Let's, this is what we're going to do and let the chips fall as they may. Tomorrow, we'll get more into the X's and O's of, in particular, Oklahoma City's defense and the challenge that it creates and some of the forecast that can be drawn based on what happened in the regular season between these two franchises. Oklahoma City won both games.
Mm-hmm.
One of them more lopsided than the other. I remember, the game, I think Holder went with me to the game that was here. And to Steven's point, I think we were probably talking my weird hypothetical questions that I present to people the whole time and weren't necessarily looking at the X's and O's of the game. But I remember, Gilgeous-Alexander he is a quicker-stepped Andrew Nembhard in terms of mid-range ability. Now, he obviously can score.
Man.
Yeah, he could score from anywhere, but his ability to step back and hit in mid-range shots and get himself open is really gifted.
Pacer fans are going to get frustrated because Jalen Brunson was a foul baiter, and it was very, apparent. Shea leads the league in drives, and Shea is different because he's very slithery.
Yes.
And he's hard to
He has
stay
very
in
good
front
body
of.
control.
Very good body control. He hits shots from different angles that most people can't hit shots from, and he finds a way to draw contact to get to the line. And it's going to be fascinating to watch. Like we've already talked about with Scott Agnes and briefly with Debbie Antonelli, just about how both the teams want to play fast. But I feel like the Pacers play a different type of fast and a different tempo than Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City, their fast is trying to get out and score in transition before the defense is set. The Pacers fast is that coupled with all the player movement and the passing of the basketball and making sure the ball is never sticking and it's always moving around, forcing the other team to constantly be in motion and try to create a difficult life for the opposing team defensively. And I think that's where the difference is between these two teams. And if you can bog down Oklahoma City in a half-court set, I think that gives the Pacers an advantage, but they've got Shea.
Mike Brown, another coach that was fired after losing to the Pacers. J&V literally just sprinted in
How
here
about
with a huge
that?
grin on his
Couple
face.
of things, too, man. Did you have to see that idiot from New York and the fan of the rant on Halliburton? New York made Halliburton. Did you see that making its rounds yesterday?
No, I was too busy watching Rappaport.
Halliburton got Thibodeau fired. They got themselves a new coach because of Halliburton.
That's exactly right.
Hey, by the way, I was listening on my way in, and when you said that to Eddie about him eating those chips in your face right there, it reminded me of Kingpin. Whenever Bill Murray is at that restaurant at the table and the waitress walks over and he asks her to wash off her perfume.
Let me ask you this.
Would you wash off that perfume?
Did you hear Eddie's chips?
I did not. Okay. I can't hear anything, though, so I'm not a good subject to test. I can hear nothing. But I will say this. There are times with James, I want to say, hey, would you cut that man bun off? I'm sick of looking at
it. He does have. Where is James, by the way?
He's down the hall.
Okay. What's on the big show today, John?
We got good question. What are we doing today? Here he comes right here. I forget. He told me a little bit earlier, but it's really good. Really strong.
You've got it. You got it all lined up. Is that what you're saying?
All lined up. Thibodeau, man. Halliburton got Thibodeau fired.
I'm telling you.
That's going to be my take today.
Nothing wrong with that, man.
I love it, too. Who's that Jason McIntyre that's on with Colin Cowherd that says he's got to have star power and this is boring?
I saw that. Yeah, I mean, come on,
a
man.
basketball dork. Can you imagine not liking two teams that push the ball, get up and down the floor, score, and then one team plays defense better than anybody else while also doing that? That's like basketball heaven right there, except for these jacksticks that don't know anything.
Look, it's not like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander didn't have star power.
He's an MVP.
He's correct, yeah. Give me a break.
People have been asking about finals ticket sales. Pacers about a half hour ago tweeted this out. Watch party tickets will go on sale tomorrow at 10 a.m. And all proceeds from that will benefit the Pacers Foundation. Tickets for home games 3, 4, and 6 will go on sale Thursday at 2 p.m. And then the Game 2 watch party tickets will go on sale at 10 a.m. on Friday.
Also, watch party, by the way, Ale Emporium. I will be there for game number 1 beginning at 7 o'clock that evening, all courtesy of our friends at Mick Ultra Zero. Fisher's Ale Emporium. So come out, get some Hermanaki wings, some Mick Ultra.
There'd be some smoke up in that place, too, man.
Yeah.
I may have to join you.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Come out, watch the NBA Finals at the Ale Emporium in Fishers. We will be doing that. John is up next. We'll be back with you at noon tomorrow, and I thank you for listening to Query and Company.